Now, one of the things we've learned about Trump and his family is that they really are, in every way, shape, or form, open for business. They are willing to have their wheels greased. And no matter how big of a criminal, and this is to me the biggest reason why you would want to get Trump out of there, is that the more he loses his marbles and the more into this hell on earth term that we're going through right now, the more criminals that are going to grease his wheels and his family's wheels with riches, lots and lots of riches, they're going to want their pardons. They're going to want to get out of there. You know who's seeking a pardon right now? Sheila Sherfilis McCormick. Although I don't think she has enough to offer Trump to get that.
Well, doesn't she first need a conviction before she get a pardon? Guys, and Travers, touche. Same to you, Henry. Guys, absolutely. If you are supporting status quo, that's great, and I appreciate that. 100%. And that is supporting all of us.
And I saw what you messaged. I did not see Lindsey Graham when I was in Orlando. I didn't go to any of the theme parks. I was there for business. So, according to
Peter wasn't in bathroom stalls looking for trouble.
I wasn't putting my foot underneath stalls or shaking my hand underneath. You know, I think both of them work. Although maybe Kristi Noem's husband might be doing that. Anything's possible. So anyway, from the America First Post, President Trump granted a full pardon to Jewish nursing home operator Joseph Schwartz after he served just 3 months of a 3-year sentence for a $39 million fraud scheme. First of all, how do you only get 3 years for perpetuating a $39 million white-collar crime spree? Now, I don't know about you, Jen, but this guy looks like he could be a rabbi, or maybe he's just a religious scio. Whatever the case is.
He's just Orthodox or whatever. He's disgusting.
Federal prosecutors said that Schwartz refused to pay payroll taxes that had been withheld from employees' wages across 11 states. 11 states. Boy, he's committing lots of crimes. Schwartz reportedly paid $960,000 to lobbyists Jack Berkman and Jacob Wohl, yes, they both are, if you're wondering, to secure the pardon from the White House.
Trump's running pay to play, man. He's making money off of everything. He probably charges admission to people coming in, you know? I mean, he's pay to play.
The worst part about this story that you're not seeing here is that Schwartz, like so many other Zionist Jews, when they're involved in real estate, this isn't just any multifamily real estate. This is senior living multifamily real estate. So he was fucking over old people.
Those are the most vulnerable people. That's how you get away with it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, and not only was he screwing them over with the fraud, but he was withholding payment. I mean, if you want to talk about people who absolutely should be paid a living wage, a true living wage, it's the orderlies that have to work in assisted living facilities. There is not enough money in the world you could ever pay me to wipe a person's ass. Can't do that. But people that get into these jobs because that's what's available to them. And let's also keep in mind that without question, I don't want to be stereotypical, but I'm going to be, if this guy is a Jew and he's owning all of this real estate that is of assisted senior living, I think it is safe to say that some of those properties are in South Florida. So what's one of the really noted common themes when it comes to South Florida assisted living orderlies? They're typically immigrants. They are typically people who are already in a vulnerable category and are working a job that isn't necessarily paying them anywhere near enough for them to survive, much less thrive. So why not just take even more advantage of them and withhold their pay? Skimming. That's a federal crime. And yet this bastard only has to serve 3 months in prison. I can't do it, Jen. I can't stay in prison. It's not for the folk. It's not for the chosen folks. We don't have to do this.
Okay, so do you want to move on to either the story about the Gulf or the story about the Iranian corporate hit list? Which one?
Well, I would think that we can
I'm
always
asking
talk about,
one of those.
yeah, we could always talk about the Gulf. I think that the hit list in some ways kind of ties into what we're talking about here.
Okay, so we'll end with this. So it occurs to me that we haven't addressed really Iran and where we are with that. And contrary to what Trump said in his delusional, maniacal presentation, we're not winning anything. We're winning nothing. We have won nothing. And in fact, I bet he forced on worker friend. Who are we talking about?
The orderlies that were working
Oh,
away.
all right. I'm on to the next thing. So Trump is completely delusional lying. And in Iran, we're having our asses handed to us every way. They're in charge. Iran is in charge. They're calling the shots. His 15-point plan is irrelevant at this point, right? So one of the things that they have done, and they recently just took out some sort of data center, Amazon data center, is they specifically put out a list. Colin, I don't know which one of those stories it was, but there was one that had like the hit list. But Iran put out a warning, a statement, and to the employees of the companies that they are saying are part of the
Can I
empire,
call,
military
you know
industrial
what?
complex.
Can I call an audible if that's okay?
Why?
I'll pick up this story, um, the Iran story on Saturday. I think this story, I know you've been wanting to talk about this with the whales. I know this is something that's very important to you, and I don't want to
Yeah,
rush.
but you had said that we could always. All right, whatever.
No, I think it's important. Because we could always talk about Iran on Saturday. This is something I could talk about it. What I'm saying is this is a story you really wanted to hit, and I think it's very important because we don't. The thing about Iran and what's happening right now that I think is really getting overlooked, that we really don't talk about enough, is the environmental catastrophe that is coming, that we're already living through, and it's only getting so much worse. So how would you like to set this up?
Well, I mean, okay, so you want to pivot to the other story, like mid-story. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this that was like jarring, but okay. So this story came out the other day, and it's one of the things that I feel like we have been somewhat overlooking to some extent when we talk about all these wars and all of these issues, and we don't remember what ultimately comes back to the environment and how it's all connected. So us having a fossil fuel and oil crisis, well, what does that look like? How does that affect not just our gas prices, but what we're going to start to do to compensate for that? And one of those things is drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. Yes, that's the only one I'm talking about. But so I saw this article about this whale, this species of whale, and I've never heard of this whale before, which is interesting just because I've lived next to the Gulf of Mexico for most of my life. But this whale is the only whale that lives year round in the Gulf of Mexico, and it is at risk of going extinct. Okay, so it just caught my attention. So we can read this article, and it's not the only species, but there it is. I believe it's a rice whale, which I had never heard of that. But several high-ranking Trump officials that make up the so-called God Squad voted on Tuesday to quash longstanding Endangered Species Act regulations in the Gulf of Mexico, exempting all oil and gas drilling. It's an outcome environmentalists fear could spell doom for the critically endangered Rice's whale, a species that only exists in the Gulf and has just 50 whales left in existence. The God Squad is a panel of 6 high-ranking federal officials on the Endangered Species Committee that has the ability to decide exemptions in the Endangered Species Act. It earned, where did you go? What happened? Okay, there it is. It earned the name because the committee has the power to play God.
Unreal.
It literally has the power of life or death, said Pat Parento, an emeritus law professor at the Vermont Law School who helped write the original exemption provision in the law. It can grant an exemption that would actually result in the extinction of a species. Such exemptions to the Endangered Species Act are extremely rare. Tuesday marked just the fourth time in history the committee has voted, and the first it has voted for an exemption on national security grounds. And what is that national security issue? It's a fuel shortage. And why are we having a fuel shortage? Well, the Strait of Hormuz has been closed to us, and Iran has been setting our supply on fire. And so that is a problem. But so we created the problem, and now our solution is to create an even further problem by drilling in the Gulf. Last week, Secretary of Defense Pete Hogsbreath requested an exemption to the Endangered Species Act requirements across all oil and gas exploration in the Gulf of Mexico for reasons of national security. Here's the thing. I would much rather see the extinction of Pete Hogsbreath than the Rice's whale. So I vote that he gets thrown into the Gulf, and then maybe we could consider this. Seth, at his meeting, said the national security threat stems from environmental group lawsuits that aim to protect endangered species in the Gulf. Groups have sued in recent years, aiming to reduce boat traffic speeds in the area that can strike and kill Rice's whales and restrict seismic air gun activity that can interfere with their whale navigation and communication. Oil spills also pose a threat, blah, blah, blah. Anywho, scroll. Oh, come on, Colin. There we go. Okay, yeah. Rice's whale is the species closest to the brink of extinction in the Gulf. Other endangered and threatened species live there too, including sea turtles, manatees, and whooping cranes. But what's a few species? What's a few species so that people can continue living the ridiculous, excessive lifestyles that they live that burn through the majority of fossil fuels on the planet? Because it isn't most people that do that. It really isn't. The majority of the world does not do that. The majority of the world would be able to survive a lot better than we would in this country, because we are so ridiculously over dependent on fossil fuels. So instead of being less dependent, we're just going to take out a few more species. All right. I think that is enough of that. I think
the Rice's whale is the species closest to the Rice's whale is the species closest to the brink of extinction in the Gulf. But
I just read that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you didn't read that part.
I just read that.
I'm sorry.
No, the rationale provided by Hogsbreath and other officials for the exemption was that these lawsuits were regulations to protect endangered species, make it less certain for oil and gas companies to plan and execute their drilling operations.
I mean, they're just putting it right out there.
Therefore hurting U.S. national security. Yes.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't occur to these people that national security is not tied to fossil fuel like they think it is. The military industrial complex is tied to the fossil fuel industry. Our security is tied to our ability to sustain ourselves, which we don't have. And all the oil in the fucking world, Pete, won't be able to satisfy when we have no food and water.
You're talking to me?
Fuck. No, Hogsbreath.
I wasn't sure. I mean, I already knew, but you might have wanted to just remind me. It's always possible.
No, I'm talking. It's like, that's not the national security problem. The national security problem is that we're not going to have food and water when the rest of the world cuts us off.